Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another episode of Beyond This with me, Zaheerah, Bham, Ismail. Last week, we touched on the narratives, our stories, our identities being held and being spoken about by other people. And we wanted to move that discussion onwards to why is it so important that we hold our own narrative and how we actually hold this narrative. How do we start changing it? I had someone who came to see me earlier this week and was talking about it's well and good that we talk about this, but how do we actually do it? Because it's so much of work. And it is. It really is a lot of work. But we have to be committed to wanting to do better for ourselves. Because if we don't, we continue with these legacies that get taken forward. So when we speak about it, we talk about the women who of legacy, who owned their own narratives. Khadija radiallahu anha, Aisha radiallahu anha, Nusayba radiallahu anha, Sumayya radiallahu anha, Rufayda radiallahu anha, Asya radiallahu anha. And these are not people or names that you've just heard in history books. Go and read up about them, whether they were leaders in their own right, whether they were businesswomen, entrepreneurs. Khadija radiallahu anha chose her own husband. She set life on her own terms, anchored in her faith. Aisha radiallahu anha, her knowledge, her input, the way she taught people around her, still influences and impacts generations to today and going into the future. When we talk about Nusayba, a warrior whose courage was beyond expectations, beyond what we've seen. When we talk about Sumayya radiallahu anha, who was the first martyr, and we see that her strength was something that still inspires us, that she redefined what courage looked like. She changed it for all of us, and it wasn't in opposition to men, but it was in service of faith. And Rufayda, who was one of the first Muslim nurses, who defined herself by service and by healing. And one of the things when we talk about, and I mentioned Asya radiallahu anha earlier also, who chose her faith over power, over oppression. And her story is one of spiritual independence. And when we understand that these women weren't talking about adapting, they lived their own identities. They defined it. They owned it. And this is why they're so influential in terms of how we are living our lives these days. If you look back at the history of it, you'll understand that when people speak about the role of Muslim women and they speak about this oppressive, soft, I don't even know all the negative words around it, that comes so much more from everything else, from cultural biases, from media biases, from people wanting you to fit into certain boxes. And when we go and we read about these women and we understand that everything that they owned about their identity was anchored in faith, but allowed them to live and to live by their own identities, to develop their own identities, then we understand that there is so much of space for us and a space of belonging. And if it isn't where you are, then you need to create it for the generations of women that are around you and the generations of women that are still to come behind that. When we talk about telling our narratives, why is it so important? The truth of it is, if we don't tell our stories, someone else is going to tell the story. And then it's going to be too late to sit back and go, why are they saying we like this? Why are we saying we like that? Because what personal responsibility are each of us taking to be able to change this narrative for ourselves? Islam honored women with agency from the very beginning. So this is not reclaiming our identity as being a modern form of thinking. It's actually going back to our roots. It's an understanding of who we are, the legacy we come from, and walking up straight with that and understanding that completely. When I spoke about this beautiful woman that came before us, what it also teaches us is, and especially in today's time, that whatever defines us controls us. And that allows for us to be able to do a lot of introspection into understanding who we are. Are we comfortable to just go with the status quo? Or are we actually going to take our power back and reframe the vision that we have for ourselves and also what we hand down to others? Because our daughters are watching. Our nieces are watching, our sisters are watching, and some may not be able to have a voice. But if we continue being silent, they inherit silence. And this is something that we need to understand is an amana on us to be able to change. Muslim women are not just one story. We are a complex range of stories, and there's strength in the diversity that we bring. And we shouldn't shy away from any of the roles that we have. I often say that we've got a beautiful femininity within us. I know that many women are put into situations where they've been forced to do things that would not be in their roles to perform, but because of situations or circumstances, they're forced to step up to those roles. And alhamdulillah, they do that with conviction, they do that with strength, they do that with courage. But also remember that we have a beautiful femininity that gives us empathy, that gives us a gentleness, that gives us a kindness, and we should hold on to that and embrace it and not shy away from it, because it's one of the parts that's intrinsic to our identity as well. And when we speak about the diversity of our roles, of our identities, of who we are, we need to understand that we can be playing a number of roles and still be strong as Muslim women. We don't have to just be one or the other. And we don't have to choose and say, I only choose to be this so I can be nothing else. When we read about the women that came before us, they were multifaceted. They were excelling in so many roles, but they were comfortable in their identities. They were comfortable in their spaces, and they owned it because they understood what agency meant. So when we talk about our roles and why it's important to do this, one of the biggest thing that comes out for me is that we didn't read a copy and paste. We really don't need that. We've said this so many times. We have to live authentically, and that in itself becomes a form of worship. Because when we're true to ourselves, we're true to the gifts that have been given to us, and we give off that into the world because we're here for a purpose. There's something that you need to be doing. So no matter what anyone has told you about who you are or your place or what you should be or shouldn't be, understand that you have a purpose. Your job is to find that purpose and to serve Allah through that purpose and to be able to make an impact into the world. So my question to you is, what is the one label that you've been given that doesn't belong to you, that you are not comfortable with, that you've been feeling doesn't sit well with you? And also, how are you going to change it? What is the one truth about yourself that you want to reclaim back, that you want to hold on to, that you want to be able to move forward with? And whether you share this in safe spaces, whether you share it with a friend, whether you share it with a family member, or whether you just journal it or you just speak to Allah when you're on your musalla, do what works for you. But start making those changes for yourself, because when you understand the reality of what you're facing, that we only have one life. We're not coming back to do this again. You don't get to do another take of it. What's past is past. You literally only have this moment. You'll hold on to that and you'll make the most of it, because this is the only chance we have. And the legacy that we leave behind for our daughters, for our sisters, our nieces, our friends, that's what holds the power and holds the weight. So if we're not making those changes, we just continue with it. So when we talk about the how, and this was the conversation that came up, is how do we actually do it? It's not about theory. It's about real actions that women can take every single day to own their identity. And again, it doesn't need to be in opposition to anyone else. Holding our identity as Muslim women is anchored deeply in our faith, but it's anchored in a form of authenticity about owning who we are and being unapologetic for that as well. And if other communities, if the greater community, if other spaces are not creating or providing these safe spaces for us, it's up to us to provide these safe spaces for our young girls around us and for our sisters around us as well. So we need to start with a mindset shift. You need to be able to recognize the old scripts. Notice where you've been accepted. Notice where you've taken other people's definitions of who you're supposed to be. And you need to be able to affirm your own worth. So go back again. Understand what your identity is. It's rooted in being a servant of Allah and not in people's approval. We do so much trying to please people, make people happy. And we mentioned this in the last podcast where we said, regardless of what you do, people are always going to have an issue. You could put everything down and somebody will have an issue about it wasn't done in the right way. It wasn't said in the right way. So you need to start affirming it, because when you start holding on to what truly resonates with you, when you understand where the anchor base of your identity is, you'll stop being apologetic for that. And you'll shift from having an apologetic stance about your identity to living in a more authentic manner completely. We really have to stop explaining our choices to everyone. I said to a lovely young lady today that, I used to previously write out and say, I'm sorry, and then go into an explanation because, or but, and these are the reasons. And now I just stop with, I'm so sorry, I'm unable to make it, or I'm so sorry, I'm unable to do this. Because if certain things are not fitting well with you, you don't have to keep over explaining yourself to others. Between you and Allah, if that's clear, you're good to go, alhamdulillah. The one thing I must say is very often and I want to throw this in here as well, because we'll look at other people and we do think that, oh, how can they do this or say this? And we really have to get into a concept also of practicing husna then, of making excuses, thinking the best of others, because you have to understand that the person that's hurt you and yourself bow down to the same Allah. And I think that'll humble you to understand that everybody's got a different perspective of what their truth is, what their authenticity is. And the world, no matter what we've been through, owes us nothing. We actually owe people around us something, but the world doesn't owe anything to us. So when you understand that your relationship and this journey, yes, we have obligations to people, but your main obligation is between you and Allah. And if you can carry that well, then we don't need to keep just pleasing people around us. Because at that point, you please no one, not even yourself. So we've got to go back to a more authentic story for ourselves. Voice your story. And this is just a practical way of being able to do it. Whether you prefer writing, whether you prefer speaking, whether you want to share your perspective, even if it feels small. I know that there's a group that meets online called Conversations, which provides safe spaces for Muslim women. And it's an online space where if you feel you can share who you are in that space, go and speak about it. Because very often we think, this is not important. Every single person's story is important. Your story is important. Your story is valid. So write it down. Set your boundaries. This is something we speak about, and people mistake what boundaries means. We think that, it means if I don't like someone, I don't need to be there. No, it doesn't. It's about respecting your own time, respecting your own energy, respecting your own value system. And if something doesn't resonate with that, then you need to be putting up healthy, respectful boundaries that protect your energy, that protect your space, and doesn't allow you to compromise your identity and who you are, especially in a stage when you're still trying to find that out. I think it's important that we celebrate our complexity. You have to understand that you can be a mother, you can be a leader, you can be a professional, you can be a dreamer. You don't have to just be one. Do everything that you've wanted to do because we have the ability to do it. If there's something that you're passionate about, understand that your one role doesn't take away from anything else. You are able to pursue that as well for yourself. And we need to have visibility with intention. As Muslim women, we need to step into spaces where Muslim women's voices are missing. We see that with media. We see that in certain workplace environments. We see that in community where you will hear everyone else's voices, but you won't hear the impact of the Muslim woman's voice. A simple example, in war-torn countries or any country where we're seeing things going wrong and we see there's a lot of stress and strife and people are struggling, the people that are most affected are women and children. But very often you'll see organizations going in that have absolutely no females part of the organization. How are you relating or impacting or interacting with women and children who are most affected without having an understanding of what that would possibly mean? If women are missing from sacred spaces, if women are missing from spaces where there are no voices heard, we are not second-grade citizens. We are an integral part of the community. Islam has made us an integral part of it. Those voices need to be heard. Those voices need to be taken into account. And women's voices need to be in places because we are an integral part of this community. We are raising the next generation of the ummah of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So our voices should be heard and not silenced at all. One of the things that I often find that, and again, a side note on this, the toxicity that we surround Muslim women with. I'm so tired of reading and hearing about how toxic we are, or how toxic women generally are and what they're putting out there. And really there's toxicity in every single person, whether you're male or you're female. What we do with that comes out, and how people see Muslim women or how people see and talk about us is a reflection of them. It's a reflection of where their mindsets are. Because I promise you, when you carry yourself with dignity, when you carry yourself with an authenticity and a sincerity, then those words have no place for it, especially in circumstances where people don't want you. So try and define whether they're actually attacking your identity as a Muslim woman, or it's their own insecurity about whether you should be in that place or not. Another thing that we need to have is a mentorship and a sisterhood. We don't live in a utopia. We're not all going to get along. We're not all going to like everyone around us. But the least we can do is keep people safe at our lips. So if we're not comfortable with them and we're not there for we don't want to be in their spaces, that's perfectly fine. Just don't break them down. And when we talk about mentorship and sisterhood, we have phenomenal young ladies, actually phenomenal youth in our community that are coming up. The moment we are comfortable in our skins with owning our identity, we will never hesitate to open doors for them, because we truly have an understanding that what's written for us is written. Nobody will be able to take it away. But open up those doors, provide that mentorship, provide that skill, allow it to pass on, because all they'll do is they'll take it and they will make it better. They have far more knowledge, they have far more insight. Guide it so that it becomes better, so that we pass on stronger, better, more authentic legacies than what was handed down to us. And this is what it is about. So when we look back and we talk about our ownership, about defining it, it's so important that we define our own. And we do it not just for ourselves, like I said, but for all the women who come after us. When we're talking about reclaiming our narrative, we have to understand how important that part of the journey is, no matter how difficult it is, no matter where you live, no matter what family you're from, no matter what community you're from. This is part of what we have to do. As much as there's an amana for us in every part of our lives, living with purpose is also an amana. Living with intent is also an amana. Living in our mindful moments, holding onto our sacred spaces, holding onto our safety, holding onto our authenticity, holding onto our agency, that's part of our deen. It's not a modern outlook to it. It's going back to our roots of who we are. Islam gave us our worth already. And we keep saying this. But if we don't know it, if we've never read about it, how are we going to actually be able to live it? It's about remembering it. It's about learning it. It's about reading up about it. It's about integrating it into our lives. It's about living every single moment so authentically that it refuses for anyone else to be able to write our story except for us. We ask that, when we walk on this journey, that we're protected and honored by a dua for clarity, for courage, and for authenticity. As Muslim women, we understand that our narrative has been written far too long by too many other people. We know now why it's so important for us to write our own narratives, to control our own narratives, to control how we are seen. And we went through a very brief process on how to actually do this. Take the first step, because what comes next starts here.